Let's begin with the foundations. Welcome to another lecture. Today we examine Ilia Topuria, a case study in modern mixed martial arts, who in a brief span became both featherweight and lightweight champion in the UFC, and in so doing a focal point for cross-national sporting identity in Georgia and Spain. I am Professor Alexei, and with me is Priyanka, whose questions, as always, will keep us honest and perhaps even concise.
Thank you, Professor. I'm Priyanka. I think today will be interesting because he's not just a champion. He's also kind of a bridge between cultures and weight classes, which, is rare.
To frame our discussion, we define terms. Mixed martial arts is a full contact sport, permitting striking and grappling, both standing and on the ground. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu emphasizes positional control and submissions. A knockout is a terminal strike or sequence that renders an opponent unable to continue. And a double champion is an athlete who wins undisputed titles in two UFC weight divisions, sequentially or in some eras, simultaneously. Born in 1997 in Germany to Georgian parents, Topuria rose to global prominence by winning the featherweight title in February 2024 via a second-round knockout of Alexander Volkanovski. Defending against Max Holloway by third-round knockout in October 2024, vacating the featherweight belt in early 2025 due to weight cut constraints and strategic planning, then capturing the vacant lightweight title in June 2025 with a 2 minutes 27 seconds first-round knockout of Charles Oliveira, before losing via corner stoppage TKO to Justin Gaethje in June 2026. That last contest marked his first professional defeat.
I'm curious about one thing, Professor. When people say double champion, is there any debate about the exact framing? Or is it like settled vocabulary?
It's important to understand that our definitions in combat sports can be slightly elastic. In this case, the conventional usage is that Topuria held undisputed UFC titles in two distinct weight classes across his career, while at the moment he captured the second belt, still maintaining an undefeated professional record. Some analysts argue over inclusions of interim reigns or simultaneous holding, but the prevailing interpretation places him within the double champion cadre on undisputed terms.
Moving on. Why should we care? I mean, beyond the belts, what's the broader relevance to sports culture?
In this context, we observe two intersecting stakes. First, national identity. Topuria became the first Georgian UFC champion, and after receiving Spanish citizenship in March 2024 with dual status formalized, the first Spanish UFC champion. Georgia awarded him the Order of Honor shortly thereafter. Spain embraced him as a symbol of elite performance and cosmopolitan representation. Second, the broader competitive narrative. Historically, the risks of changing weight classes have been underestimated by spectators and sometimes by athletes, given that physiology, speed, and power dynamics shift non-linearly with weight. When a champion moves up successfully, it recalibrates our priors about transferability of skill and durability across divisions. Let's start with the history. Topuria's biographical arc is striking. Born in Halle, Westfalen to Georgian parents who were refugees from Abkhazia, moved to Georgia at 7 and trained in Greco-Roman wrestling, which shaped clinch balance and upper body control. Relocated to Alicante at 15 and immersed himself in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at Climate Gym, later transitioning fully to MMA. He debuted professionally in Spain in 2015, won the mixed fight event's featherweight title, and began exporting that success internationally in Finland and Belgium, including a 2018 first-round guillotine in Helsinki and a quick win in Antwerp. though after a missed weight that voided title eligibility. Brave Combat Federation in 2019 amplified his global profile with consecutive first-round finishes. He entered the UFC in late 2020 on short notice, outpointed Youssef Zalal, then produced emphatic stoppages over Damon Jackson and Ryan Hall. Subsequent milestones included a comeback knockout of Jai Herbert in London, a submission of Bryce Mitchell, a 5-round masterclass against Josh Emmett earning Fight of the Night, and then the championship run against Volkanovski and Holloway.
Building on that, he's also multilingual, right? Georgian, English, Spanish, and some Mingrelian. I often think that linguistic range helps with fan connection. And he identifies as Christian and is a father of 2. I wonder whether those elements shaped his public voice as disciplined but grounded.
Clearly, the multilingualism combined with dual citizenship broadened his marketability and sense of belonging. He also cites Mexican boxing, notably Canelo Alvarez, as an influence which we can observe in his compact guard, layered feints, and commitment to bodywork. This synthesis produced a rare outcome in MMA. He tied the UFC record for consecutive fights with a knockdown at 7, earned multiple Performance of the Night bonuses, and secured knockouts over 3 former champions, Volkanovski, Holloway, and Oliveira, while credible grappling threats endured from his BJJ base. Merab Dvalishvili's sparring accounts, including body shot knockdowns, align with that bodywork thesis, and notably, Oliveira publicly described Topuria as the hardest puncher he faced in the UFC, which, given Oliveira's ledger, is non-trivial data. Before we get to the complexities, a small personal note. I once attended a Greco-Roman session as a young lecturer. I approached it like a chess endgame, which was, as it were, optimistic. In approximately 12 seconds, a gentleman half my age parked me on the mat with a throw that felt like a forceful footnote. Since then, I study the sport with the due humility one reserves for Rachmaninov preludes, elegant from a safe distance.
That was helpful to think through, actually.
This logically leads us to 3 guiding questions. First, the historical question. What led to the vacating of the featherweight title? Second, a counterfactual. Had he officially won the Cage Warriors bantamweight title in 2018, how might his trajectory have changed? And third, an open inquiry. How will evolving safety protocols, including corner-initiated stoppages as in the Gaethje bout, shape future championship fights? On the first question, we can infer a convergence of physiology and strategy. Recurring weight cut difficulties at featherweight were not theoretical. In early 2022, a planned bout dissolved due to a weight-related medical issue. After he won and defended the featherweight title in 2024, the cost-benefit calculus sharpened. Dana White publicly cited weight cut challenges and, importantly, a lack of interest in lingering at 145 pounds given the opportunities at lightweight. By February 2025, the mechanism for vacating was formalized, and the shift to 155 pounds produced a peak result, an emphatic first-round knockout of Oliveira in June 2025, validating the move from a performance perspective.
If I may suggest a simple question, what, physiologically, makes the featherweight cut so punishing for some athletes? Is it mostly water, or something else too?
Mathematically, the late-stage cut is largely water, but the system-wide consequences extend beyond hydration. Rapid dehydration depletes plasma volume, stresses renal and cardiovascular regulation, and coupled with glycogen depletion, can impair cognition and reaction time. Thermoregulatory strain and electrolyte imbalance further compromise neuromuscular function. Even with rehydration, the window between weigh-in and competition may be insufficient for full restoration, particularly of intramuscular glycogen and cerebrospinal fluid dynamics. Hence, durability and pace may deteriorate just when an opponent is freshest. For a power puncher whose timing is central, a marginal decline in speed or resilience has outsized effects.
So the decision to move up reads like an investment in sustainable output, rather than, chasing an extra size advantage at 145.
Precisely. At lightweight, he retained concussive power, as Oliveira can attest, while reducing physiological volatility. Strategically, the division also offered high-value matchups and brand elevation. The subsequent loss to Gaethje in 2026, via corner stoppage at the end of round 4, reaffirms that outcomes at the elite level hinge on small margins. But the underlying logic of the move remains sound when measured against health, development, and opportunity.
Can we now look at the counterfactual? What if he had made weight in Antwerp in 2018 and taken the Cage Warriors bantamweight belt? Would the UFC have come earlier, and at 135 instead of 145 or 155?
To elaborate, such a win would likely have accelerated UFC interest, and yes, at 135. However, path dependence matters. At bantamweight, he would have faced a faster cohort with extensive scrambling and chain wrestling in smaller frames. This environment may have incentivized the more control-oriented, submission-heavy style, delaying the flowering of his boxing-centric identity. Furthermore, the missed weight itself is information. It suggested that even in 2018, bantamweight was near or beyond optimal. Persisting there might have increased the frequency of severe cuts, thereby elevating health risks and variability in performance. Public perception could also have shifted. A bantamweight entry would have altered narratives of size, power, and perhaps the later mystique of moving up to vanquish former champions in higher divisions. In simpler terms, an earlier debut is not automatically a better one. The developmental arc he actually followed seems to have been conducive to his blend of BJJ threats and high-percentage boxing counters.
What comes to mind next is technique. If he were molded by bantamweight pacing, do you think his famous bodywork and shoulder roll counters would have emerged the same way?
Arguably not at the same tempo or with the same payoff. His shoulder roll adaptations seen to effect against Josh Emmett are risky in 4-ounce gloves. They thrive when paired with fight-stopping power to punish overextension. At bantamweight, where finishes can skew toward accumulation rather than single-shot knockouts, the cost-benefit of that defensive gambit might disfavor its frequent use. Meanwhile, his bodywork, shovel hooks and level changes reminiscent of Mexican boxing, translated beautifully at featherweight and lightweight because it conditioned elite opponents to lower their guard, opening precise rear-hand lanes. Different divisional physics could have suppressed the same deterrent effect. So while the toolkit might still exist, its emphasis and public resonance could be materially different. Let's transition to another aspect: athlete safety and the Gaethje bout. The corner stoppage at the end of round 4, while dramatic in a unification context, reflects an evolving ethos. Corners increasingly act as guardians of long-term health, rather than mere extensions of willpower. It is worth noting that labeling the result as a historically enormous upset is subjective. Absent a universal upset metric, such superlatives function more as narrative color than empirical assessment.
To shift gears a bit, maybe it's just me, but I wonder whether future protocols will formalize that protective role, with more mandatory checks between rounds, or stricter guidelines for corners to throw in the towel, so to speak?
Fundamentally, we can expect incrementalism. Likely candidates include standardized between-round neurocognitive screens tailored for cage-side application, clearer training and certification pathways for cornermen with decision-making rubrics, improved real-time communication between corners and ringside physicians, and more rigorous pre-fight weight management oversight to mitigate acute dehydration injuries that magnify in-cage risk. Some promotions have piloted hydration-based safeguards. Whether the UFC adopts analogous mechanisms is a policy matter, but the research direction in combat sports medicine is unmistakable, toward measurable, auditable thresholds that reduce discretion in the heat of competition.
Isn't it interesting how fan culture shifts? Do you think audiences will accept earlier stoppages if they believe careers get longer? Or does the appetite for late-round drama always win out?
Speaking of culture, norms evolve. Boxing has long histories of compassionate corner withdrawals celebrated in retrospect. MMA is entering a similar maturation cycle. If safety protocols are well communicated and applied consistently, fans recalibrate expectations. Narratives migrate from valorizing attrition to valorizing craft and longevity. Topuria's corner stoppage loss, paradoxically, may serve as an instructive precedent at the title level. It demonstrates that even in high-stakes contests, stewardship can supersede short-term optics. Over time, that can lengthen primes, yield more stylistic matchups, and preserve the very drama spectators seek. To summarize, Ilia Topuria is a Georgian-Spanish mixed martial artist who became the first UFC champion for both nations. He won featherweight gold by knocking out Volkanovski, defended by handing Holloway his first KO loss, then moved to lightweight to capture a second title with a swift finish of Oliveira, before experiencing his first professional defeat to Gaethje via corner stoppage. We examined why he vacated featherweight, physiology and opportunity, considered an alternate timeline had he won a bantamweight crown in 2018, and discussed how evolving safety norms, as dramatized by a title fight corner stoppage, may reshape championship conduct. For further study, we recommend a deeper inquiry into weight management science in combat sports, where marginal gains and medical safeguards intersect most directly with performance.
Maybe that's something we can come back to later. Thank you, Professor. And thank you all for listening to another lecture. This then completes our present analysis.